103.1, powered by Health Services Authority, committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And hello, K-Man, and welcome to another episode of Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon. And of course, welcome to Straight Talk. How are you today, Mr. Harris?
I'm very well, Mr. Solomon. Trust you had a good Wednesday. Had to check, you know.
Yeah.
A hump day, middle of the week.
Yeah.
Almost the weekend again.
No, I had an awesome day.
Fantastic.
Productive.
Wonderful. Glad to hear that. Certainly hope you and the listening audience, those within the sound of our voice, also had a good day today. We have another day, well, another evening looks like, of some rainy conditions. The National Weather Forecast calls for isolated showers and cloudiness to linger again tonight and possibly into tomorrow. 20% chance of showers expected tonight. Temperatures expected to fall to the upper 70s. So rainy, a little windy, and of course, a little cooler temperatures for your evening drive as you make your way home. Welcome to Straight Talk, brought to you, of course, on your radio dial at 103.1 FM and simulcasting live over YouTube, Instagram, and on Facebook. The keywords, if you're searching for it and haven't already added it to your favorites, is Straight Talk Radio Show. And again, we have another, hopefully, interesting, informative discussion planned for you this evening. But the highlight of our day will begin at 5 o'clock, where we will have the distinct pleasure of hosting the new Speaker of the House of Parliament, the Honorable Ezra Miller, will be our guest in studios at 5 o'clock. And we want to encourage everyone to tune in and be a part of that discussion.
It sounded almost like your tongue wanted to go somewhere between Parliament and Spartan.
It certainly did. It didn't want to cooperate at all.
Yeah.
I think the mind was saying, okay, don't call it the House, don't call it the Legislative Assembly. Remember, it's Parliament. And there was far too much communication going on in the head. And, of course, that somehow got...
Yeah, the tongue paid the price.
Yes, the tongue paid the price indeed. Quite right.
It's like, blame it on me.
Indeed. Well, the phone lines are open. 745-2626 is the number to call, or you can reach out to us on our version of the 1-800 line by dialing our WhatsApp number, that number, 928-2562. And from there, you can either send us a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. And while it isn't the preferred form of communication, particularly for members of our listening audience, we do have an email address as well. That address is host@straighttalk.ky. And by all means, if you are near your computer or your phone and you want to send an email, then by all means, you can do so with that as well. Okay, excellent. Well, we're just being told that our guest has, in fact, been moved into the green room, as we would call it. And coming up at 5 o'clock, we will welcome Mr. Miller as our guest at 5 o'clock and obviously have a time to chat a little bit about his new role as Speaker of the House of Parliament. It is 36 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock on your clock. And, of course, we want to start off. There is some good news to begin talking about this Wednesday. We have Miss Shanique Aries, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correct, a young Caymanian graduate of the University College of the Cayman Islands nursing program, who has been named the 2025 awardee of the Eloise Reed Excellence in Nursing Award, which honors an outstanding registered nurse or midwife who has demonstrated excellence, creativity, and commitment in their practice. According to an article that was contained in today's Cayman Compass, Shanique Aries' energy, enthusiasm for nursing is well known among her peers and colleagues, all of whom report her willingness to go the extra mile for her patients' well-being and to improve their care, said Nurse Helen Kirk, president of the Cayman Islands Nursing and Midwifery Association, in a press release. She went on to state that while this award has been given to those who have much more established careers in nursing, the panel believe that Nurse Shanique will become even more prominent figure in nursing throughout her promising career. It is important for us to not only recognize, but also to nurture such talents. Well, I wonder if they appreciate, we have Mr. Miller right behind you, and I wonder if they appreciate that the webcam can see them chatting outside the door.
It's good entertainment.
But he's definitely very eager to be our guest in studios, and I suppose, Ellio, you might as well welcome inside since they're right there waiting for us anyway. So, look at that. I told you Mr. Miller was a stickler for time, and certainly he's a strong believer. And if you're on time, you're already late. But if you're early, then maybe you might be on time indeed. So we'll give him a few minutes to get situated and get comfortable. We were just talking about the fact that we're going to have the pleasure of having you in studios at 5 o'clock. But thank you, Mr. Miller, for being true to form, for being obviously earlier.
This is why we know Parliament will be starting on time.
No, exactly. It bodes very well. It bodes very well. Mr. Miller, good evening to you, and such a pleasure to have you as our guest in studios.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and as long as you don't ask me too many difficult questions, I guess we'll get along okay.
No. And even if we were to be asking you difficult questions, I have no doubt in my mind that you would certainly be capable enough to answer them nonetheless. But you look well, sir.
Feeling well, knock on wood.
Yes.
It would only be a case, Mr. Harris, that he would say, I'm now speaker and I'm not going to answer questions like that anymore.
Well, we won't get into government policy.
Right.
We'll get into the operation of the Parliament.
There you go.
Fair enough. Well, if I can encourage you to pull either the microphone closer to Mr. Miller or get Mr. Miller to push himself forward just a notch so that we can hear you.
Still a little bit.
There we go.
On the overweight side, so we're going to sit back.
Oh, man, you're a handsome fella, my friend. You're a handsome fella.
Used to be one time.
Well, obviously, we were planning to have you in studios at 5 o'clock, but very, very thrilled to have you in studios earlier. Allow me to make the introduction as was planned so we can give you, as my colleague likes to say, the flowers whilst you are still alive and with us and not wait until you're gone. Today's guest, again, without any further ado, is in fact the new Speaker of the House of Parliament, the Honourable Ezra Miller. Mr. Miller's political career spans several decades here in the Cayman Islands. He was first elected as a member of the Legislative Assembly in Northside in 1984. And during his second term, which was from 1988 to 1992, he served as Minister for Health and Social Services, with a number of accomplishments during that term. And after a period in the private sector where he served, I think, as a pharmacist, some might say the first Caymanian pharmacist, he also then returned to the Legislative Assembly in 2009 and served until 2021. Miller also chaired the Public Accounts Committee from 2009 to 2021. I had the distinct pleasure of serving with him from 2017 to 2021, and he is widely considered to have a very in-depth knowledge of the procedures, protocols, and inner workings of Parliament, including the standing orders, making him an ideal choice for the new Speaker of the House of Parliament here in the Cayman Islands. And I guess the first question that springs to mind as it relates to your new role, Mr. Miller, is, was there any warning? Was there any, discussion beforehand that you might be, chosen as Speaker, or were you as surprised as we all were when you first got the phone call?
I was surprised because I had retired from politics in 2021 when I lost the election, and I stayed completely out of the recent campaign, and I was kind of surprised. You heard little rumblings that things go certain ways or whatever, but I've heard that many times in the past.
Yeah.
It didn't pan out. So I was quite pleasantly surprised to get a call from my MP, first of all, and then closer following that from the Honorable Premier, Mr. Andre Ebanks. And I accepted and look forward to what I hope will be 4 years of upgrading and bringing the Parliament back where it was the standard that we in Cayman expect of our Parliament.
Hopefully we get more than 4 years. But we did mention here on the...
Not a young boy now, you know.
Well, you're still young. One of the things we mentioned, Mr. Miller, on the program, and is the fact that I thought it was very honorable, to say the least, that someone that, first of all, he worked with you at one point, but nevertheless, you still had to compete. And what I have found in my time in the politics is you can get the reverse. Whereas people trying to victimize their opponents, keep them so that they can't get something to eat. And it's definitely a step in the right direction, an honorable thing that I think for the one of this particular discussion, your political opponent actually reached out and made you Speaker of the House. How do you feel about that?
Well, when I lost the election to the Honorable J. E. Banks in 2021, I sat down and I wrote him a nice, I think it was a 3 or 4 page memo, laying out all the things that were planned for Northside, etc., and offering my consult assistance, making it clear that it wouldn't be no public involvement, Yes. And he and I, he called me when he needed advice, and it was all on the quiet and the QT. And as usual, I try to provide the best possible advice I can.
Yeah.
So with my knowledge base. So and it was good. I think one of the things that we have to get away from in politics is the hatred, the animosity that
right.
has developed over the years. I tell people, you probably heard me say this before, that I'm either blessed or cursed, depending on the angle you look at it. Because from 1984 to 92, I served with honorable people. And although I was, and still is, a Bensonite, and Mr. Jim and Mr. Haig were basically my political opponents, while we would get up on the floor of the assembly and discuss and criticize policies, etc., it never got into that rancor. And when we went into the little conference room we had there, we did what was best for Cayman. I didn't find that when I went back in 2009. There was, there was a separation, so to speak, and it was more difficult to get across the aisle, so to speak, and that camaraderie wasn't
right.
there. I gave a good example of how it used to work back then.
Sure.
I tabled the first debenture legislation for the Housing Development Trust, which was part of my responsibility. And Mr. Haig, who was one of the best orators in politics
so I've heard,
has ever produced, right? He got up and let me tell you, he lambasted me in every which way you could, right? And on the way into the little coffee room to get our one chicken leg, that's all we got. We did 12 chicken legs. You got one, you didn't get 2 or 3.
Well, they definitely developed on that one.
You're right. I said to Mr. Haig, I said, Mr. Haig, the law not that bad. No, he said, my son, that's a good bill. He says, Mr. Jim started this and did nothing with it. I'm glad you're doing something about it. I said, but did you listen to yourself? He said, my son, you're a Bensonite. I can't say nothing good about your policies on the floor of the assembly. And he said, to demonstrate to you how much I support it, I am going to buy the debenture. He bought the very first one. Now, you see, you can respect that kind of debate, And, I've always found that the more debate we have, which is related to the subject at hand, the better result we get in the end.
Yes. Indeed. Well, I talked about your expectations. Forgive me for interrupting, but I just want to continue in this vein. At your acceptance speech, which I dare say perhaps might have been the shortest ever of any speaker so far anyway, but in your acceptance speech, you called for unity, respect, and dignity from parliamentarians. Whilst that certainly does fundamentally say it all, what are your expectations as Speaker, in particular, taking over a House of largely newcomers or certainly members that do not have the broad length of experience as perhaps you may have found when you first walked into Parliament?
Well, my speech was short, but if you read between the lines and look at the wording, there's a lot being said.
No, absolutely.
Right? My expectation now is that I'm hoping that I can spend time and that the newly elected people would avail themselves to the training that I would be willing to provide. In fact, our first meeting is planned for next Thursday, the 22nd.
Okay.
Because I would like to do for them what nobody did for me, except Mr. Benson. When I was elected in 1984, in those days, we swore in Parliament, and then they went up to the Glass House to be sworn in as members of Executive Council. And going through the lobby, Mr. Benson said to me, he said, "My son, you see that little black book?" In them days, it was about an inch thick. There are two things in that you need to know: standing orders, and the privileges legislation. And at that time, we had a little room that was dedicated to Miss Annie. When he told me that, I went back and got that little book, and I went and locked up in our room from about 1:30. When I left there at 5:30, everything in that book that was in my favor was in green, and everything that was in that book I could use against anybody else was in red.
Okay.
Right? So, and I have always made an effort to try and understand the rules of Parliament. And most times I even try to obey them myself, So I'm hoping that we have a new opportunity here with these new people to try and teach them that you can debate strongly. You can have strong positions on matters. And by all means, you should be given every opportunity to have your say and expose your views. But it doesn't need to be done with rancor. I would really love to see us adopt that the manual for our debates is respect and dignity.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we're right across the street from the courthouse.
Yes, sir.
Now, there's no more adversarial position than a defense attorney and a prosecuting attorney.
Right.
But they refer to themselves as my learned friend and your honor and all this kinds of stuff, So I think that I have always found that my grandmother used to tell me you get more flies with honey than vinegar.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we know that sometimes you got to throw a little vinegar just to clean the space up.
Yep.
But I'm hoping, and I'm going to make every effort I can to ensure that the newcomers and some of the old ones, that if they want to avail themselves to it, will come to the training sessions and that we can get a mutual understanding of the standing order. Which, by the way, they've made quite a few changes to the standing orders. We have new standing orders.
Yes, I wanted to touch on that tonight.
And some of them are quite good, actually. Quite good, very important changes.
Yeah, indeed. Ellio, sorry, I interrupted you last time.
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. As we get into it, we're all just eager to jump in. Well, first of all, Mr. Ezra, or Mr. Miller, sorry, let me just say that I remember you from time I was very young, because for some reason, I was probably too young to pay much attention, but my dad carried me to North Side. He must have been supporting you somehow, because...
we've always had a good relationship.
Right. And I just want to state as well that, we were on both sides of the aisle. I remember you always sitting in the southeast corner. And I always thought that's where the bad weather comes from. And you didn't hesitate to flog me especially. I think you had a special whip for me, I think. But I definitely always viewed you as a very learned person, particular and a stickler for making sure everything was in proper order. And that's been a big inspiration for me. But I definitely wanted to get into a little bit of not just you as a speaker, but also a bit of your history, because I think I can learn from that, and so can especially a lot of the younger persons. So perhaps before we get off to that break, because I see my colleague itching to tell me that it's probably break time, but...
We got about 7 minutes left, so this is a good opportunity to introduce the public to Ezra Miller, for he who does not know him already.
Right. So we want to chat a little bit about you, and I know maybe we can start by saying you always mention you're a Bensonite. Tell us what you mean when you say you're a Bensonite.
Well, when I got into politics in the 80s, there were basically two political, they weren't parties as such, but they were fairly well organized. You had the Bensonites, who were more conservative. I don't use the word they were more about Cayman, but they also had a social and a conscience. And we believed in doing good for Caymanians, especially the less well off of
The little man.
and you had and we also believed in planned development and control of the environment. Remember, Mr. Benson was the man that introduced the Cayman Protection Law, the LCCL, and the business license regime in the 70s, right? And whereas Mr. Jim was much more flamboyant and open to mass development and mass tourism and all that sorts of stuff, you know. So that there were the basic differences. There wasn't any really isms or philosophical, you know.
Yeah.
But it was more the way that they managed the country.
Okay. Well, hearing you say that, Mr. Bush then probably was more of an admirer of Mr. Borden.
Well, he started off with Benson, but then he shifted more to Mr. Borden's, and he, I think, he leaned heavily on the Mr. Willie Farrington section of West Bay.
Oh, okay.
You know.
All right.
I think he managed to bridge the gap in West Bay, and that's why he was so successful politically.
Well, totally awesome. I definitely got some more questions in that vein, but Mr. Harris, what are we looking like?
Well, we got about 5 minutes remaining. We do have already 2 comments coming from WhatsApp, largely welcomes and congratulations. We'll take the first one. Please extend my warm congratulations to Mr. Miller. His appointment as parliamentary speaker is a moment of reassurance for many Caymanians who value experience, integrity, and a deep understanding of parliamentary procedure. Mr. Miller has always been a principled voice in the House, and I'm confident he will bring a steady hand in terms of punctuality for certain and a sense of fairness to the Speaker's chair, wishing him every success in this important role. And if I can just certainly pick up on that point of punctuality, you have always maintained that you're a stickler for being on time, having served with you on the Public Accounts Committee, which I consider, again, another significant milestone in my life. I thank you for the education in which you afforded myself and other new members at the time that we had the pleasure of serving with. But during those meetings, you were very adamant about the timeliness of meetings that were set. But you were also very adamant, both in terms of the Public Accounts Committee and the meetings of Parliament in general, that there should be a schedule in advance of the number of meetings that Parliament should host meetings. Talk to us about your expectations and or not your ambitions as it relates to the punctuality of Parliament, that is the starting on time, as well as the regularity of Parliament under your leadership.
Well, in my discussion with the Premier, we talked quite a bit about kind of restoring the importance of Parliament, which over the last couple of years most of the stuff has been done at the executive level, and Parliament was a kind of a very ad hoc. So I hope that certainly for January, I would expect to sit down with the Premier prior to that and have a plan out the year so that we will know. I don't need to know the exact date, but I need to know the month. I need to know we're meeting in February, we're meeting in March, April, so that I can plan the year and Ellie, the staff, we can organize him. One of the new things in the standing orders, though, is that Parliament will not meet in July or August. So, but what I've done is I've committed to the Premier, to the Leader of the Opposition, and to the clerk and the staff that I will be in the precincts of Parliament 2 hours before Parliament is scheduled to join. That 2 hours there is to work out any little issues we have, because I intend, because the new times for Parliament to meet is from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m., I am going to come through the door at 2 o'clock.
Okay,
Right.
from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m., so the 10 o'clock in the morning start is now done away with.
The new standing orders say that Parliament will meet 2 to 8 p.m., and when Parliament is meeting, they will only meet on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Okay.
So we can get the public can get used again. I mean, again, going back to when I was there in the beginning, we knew that we were going to meet in February to deal with the throne speech,
Right.
which was the plan for the year. We knew that we were going to meet in June, and most of June was dedicated to legislation for the financial industry and stuff like that. We knew we were going to meet in September to deal with local legislation, and we knew we were going to meet in November to deal with the budgets for the next year. So we could all plan our lives. So that's what I'm hoping to achieve, and I am prepared to make my commitment to make sure that my message to the members of Parliament is, don't knock on my door 10 minutes to 2 because you don't get in.
Yes, sir.
Now, just quickly, I mean, when I was there was this whole issue and rancor on, using your word rancor, about the independence of Parliament or the Legislative Assembly at the time. Is that still an issue, or has that gone away now?
The Parliament is now set up under its own legislation.
Okay.
And we have a Parliament Management Council, which I think I chair as Speaker, right?
Yes.
And it's made up of members of from the opposition and from the government. And we manage, so it's an independent department now set up under its own legislation.
So there's nothing there that you see that you're unhappy with at this point?
Not at this point.
Right.
But I was very much involved in the drafting of the
Why does that not surprise me?
right? And so I know the law fairly well, but of course, that's where I'm coming from now. I was still down there rereading the standing orders, rereading the legislation,
Freshening up.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, we do have to pause and take a short commercial break, check in with the top of the hour news brought to you by our counterpart and partner, BBC News. But Mr. Miller, Mr. Ezra Miller, the new Speaker of the House of Parliament, is our guest in studios. And being true to form, what was scheduled for a 5 o'clock start certainly commenced and kicked off early, and Mr. Miller will remain with us. So keep it locked. Don't go anywhere. Don't change that dial. There'll be more Straight Talk next on Bobo FM.
Bobo.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive wind.
A search and recovery operation.
Race against time.
An imminent threat.
Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here.
More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
A vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Eileen McHugh with the BBC News. President Vladimir Putin's name is not on a Kremlin list of Russians due to attend Thursday's talks in Turkey about the war in Ukraine. The Russian delegation will be headed by his aide Vladimir Medinsky. Ukraine's leader, Volodymyr Zelensky, has indicated he'll only meet the Russians if Mr. Putin leads them. Vitaly Shevchenko, Russia editor at BBC Monitoring, is in Istanbul.
I've seen a report saying Volodymyr Zelensky would be taking ministers with him to Turkey, not deputy ministers. It does reveal a certain attitude, even the fact that everyone was kept waiting until literally the 11th hour here in Istanbul. Marco Rubio is currently in Antalya, also in Turkey on the south coast, but he and other American representatives will be coming to Istanbul on Friday. So let's see how that plays out, but clearly a disappointment for Volodymyr Zelensky.
Ukraine and its allies continue to push Russia to agree to an unconditional 30-day ceasefire. Syria's leader, Ahmed al-Shara, has praised President Trump's decision to lift sanctions on Syria. In a televised address, President al-Shara said it alleviated the suffering of the Syrian people.
We thank President Trump for his love and the decision to lift the sanctions. That was a brave and important decision. And he laid the foundation for stability in the region.
He also thanked regional Arab leaders for their compassion and solidarity. Earlier, Mr. al-Shara met Donald Trump in Riyadh, when the US president urged the former jihadist to normalise ties with Israel and described him as a tough and attractive guy. Health authorities and rescuers in Gaza say at least 80 Palestinians were killed by Israeli bombardment across the territory on Wednesday. The dead included women and children. Most were killed in strikes in the Jabalia area in the north. The Israeli military hasn't commented on the strikes. The UN has warned that around 1,000 critically ill patients in Sudan's Darfur region are nearly without drinking water after artillery fire destroyed a water tanker at a hospital. The strike has prompted further calls for all sides in the country's civil war to end attacks on civilian infrastructure, as Tom Bailey reports.
The UNICEF-supported truck had been stationed at one of the few medical facilities still operational in the city of El Fasher in North Darfur, where fierce fighting and bombardments have intensified in recent months. Its destruction, officials said, had severely disrupted access to safe drinking water at the facility. The civil war, which erupted in early 2023, has pitted the country's armed forces against the rival paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, leading to what the UN has described as the world's worst humanitarian crisis.
This is the World News from the BBC. A former partner of Sean Diddy Combs has been testifying at his sex trafficking trial in New York for a second day. The singer, Cassandra Ventura, has described various attacks on her by the rapper, which she said left her with facial and body bruises. Mr. Combs denies all the charges. France's Prime Minister has denied knowing about alleged sexual and physical abuse over 5 decades at a Catholic school, to which his family had links during his time as Education Minister. Francois Bayrou told Parliament he only learned of the allegations through the media. Our Paris correspondent is Hugh Schofield.
It's a big story in itself because the allegations of consistent kind of atmosphere of violence and sexual abuse at this boarding school are very serious. The other issue is Bayrou's connection with it. Bayrou is the Prime Minister. He's also the local MP and mayor in this community, Pau, in the southwest of France, near where the school is, and he sent some of his own children there. His wife even taught there. There is a kind of drip effect on his credibility and popularity, which is not good for him, particularly given his inherent weakness as a Prime Minister.
An American rock climber is recovering in hospital after surviving a fall that killed his 3 companions. Anton Selick plunged more than 120 metres in the North Cascades Mountains. Despite suffering head trauma, he managed to free himself from a tangle of ropes, trekked for 12 hours and called for help from a payphone. There's been an outpouring of concern in Nigeria for the injured footballer Taiwo Awoniyi, who's been in an induced coma after sustaining a serious abdominal injury. The striker, who plays for Nigeria's national team and the English club Nottingham Forest, collided with a goalpost during a Premier League match on Sunday. He underwent surgery on Monday. That's the latest from BBC World News.
Opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, hey man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris. And if you are just tuning in, we have with us our very distinguished guest on this rainy Wednesday evening, the new Speaker of the House of Parliament, the Honorable Ezra Miller. is with us in studios. The phone lines are open at 745-2626, or you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp number. That number to call, 928-2562. And from there, you can either send us a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. We do have one caller on the line. Let's go to the caller now. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Good evening, Austin, Ellio.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Thank you for your call.
Yeah, no, thanks for having the show on. And good evening to the newly minted Speaker of the House, I call him Honorable D. Edward Miller. I would like to be the first to congratulate you on this show, on your position, and I am really looking forward to seeing some decorum being restored to the Parliament. And I have a lot of confidence, and so does many of the island, majority of the island, in your ability to do as such. And we certainly look forward to the new coalition honouring the intentions as well, because we think we finally are getting back to a level of normalcy to whatever that is in the world of politics. But really look forward to seeing some elevated discourse within our legislators. And to keep it short and sweet, one of the things that was occurred to me, you were saying that you're doing this training program for these members of Parliament, the new members of Parliament in particular, but obviously they're being wide open. It just occurred to me that I think it's every year or every couple of years we do have like a junior Parliament.
Youth Parliament. Youth Parliament.
A youth Parliament, correct. So is this something that they could avail themselves of as well? Because, I mean, just like succession planning, you never know how these things tickles one's fancy in terms of the young folks. And if we're saying we're doing this for our youth and coming up, is it something that, can be witnessed by the public, or at a minimum, the youth Parliament participants?
Of course, and one of the things, right now I think it's an annual event, but I would like to see it happen 3 or 4 times a year, probably once a quarter, and I would like to see that youth Parliament discussing and debating topical things that the government is grappling with, so that they will give them an opportunity to have input into the governance of the country, and also to develop them as parliamentarians if they decide to go that way in the future.
That's what I would love to see, and certainly, one can't presume that would be therefore open to them or the public, but if it could be something where some information says, look, we're going to be holding it here, and the folks can sit in the gallery and witness it and learn from it, I think that would,
Too low now.
Also provide for a whole new level of.
I'm trying to get my headset.
Here, okay. You adjust it. Can you reach it? That way you can.
Yeah, sorry. We're just trying to make sure that Mr. Miller can hear you properly. Just give us just a few moments.
You feel it?
Sure, not a problem there.
All right.
Okay. We're okay now. Yeah, I think we're okay now.
Excellent. Sorry, caller. Please continue.
Yeah, no, yeah. So I was just saying that I would love to see that certainly at a minimum they could participate, whether it's from the gallery or what have you. But even if it is that it's something that because again, also find too is that the vast majority of our voting public are really ignorant, and I don't mean that in a negative context. It's just that they're not aware of how our procedures are inside there, and they sometimes get personally offended on behalf of their representative because maybe you reprimanded or somebody else took advantage of a section of the rules or what have you.
Well, caller,
so that's something that.
I'd just like to say that, first of all, I think you're spot on with a lot of things, and quite coincidentally enough, Mr. Miller and I was just chatting about the same thing on the break, and I intended to ask him some of those same questions, so excellent.
Well, there you go. You're with mind melding, man, and that's what I'm saying. Hats off to both you and Austin for an excellent subject matter on your programs this evening. Yeah. But I'll leave it there so you guys can elucidate more on it, and I just look forward to it. And once again, congratulations, Mr. Miller, and look forward to a wonderful 4 years if we can make sure and keep it on the rails.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller.
And I'll do my best not to let you down.
Yeah, and he definitely right. A lot of persons are very confident in you, Mr. Miller, and again, well deserved. So he did do a little bit of mind reading, because you and I were just chatting about that exact same thing. And I'd like to just continue on. So you talked about, education process for the MPs. Give us a little indication in terms of what you exactly want to accomplish there and how you plan on doing that. Because, again, as we mentioned during the break, I'm sure that the new MPs don't want to be embarrassed, and you don't want to be put in the difficult position of having to embarrass them. So speak to us a little bit about that.
I see my role of facilitating the function of the Parliament and providing an opportunity for each of the MPs to participate fully in the discussion. But I believe that we have rules, and the rules must be followed so that everybody has equal opportunity. And in terms of the training, when we normally have what's known as a post-election parliamentary seminar, which usually involves a CPA, we still intend to do that, but that probably will not get organized probably until September, late August or September. So in the interim period, what I'm attempting to do, and as I said earlier, the first session is planned for Thursday at 10 o'clock, is to sit down with the MPs and respectfully discuss the new standing orders and come to an understanding so that they know what my expectation, what my interpretation of the standing order is, and encourage them to participate fully, but to do so within the rules. I'll give you, for instance, if the standing orders say if you want to speak, you must rise and to get the attention of the speaker. They seem to have gotten into the habit of having hand signals or turning on the light or whatever. Now, the rules say you want to speak, you stand up.
Rise to your feet.
If all stand up at one time, I will recognize one person. That's the person that'll have the floor. You do not speak until you are recognized, But you will probably have noticed on the Wednesday session when I gave them the opportunity, as every other speaker has given the new members and all of them, to thank their constituents and stuff like that, and I gave them a 3-minute window and stuff like that. And after one MP spoke, and I said, does another member wish to speak? And everybody was sitting down, like, not paying me no mind. Well, I leaned forward, turned on the mic and said, and the question is, right? Because I was going to put the question. Because I've always felt it sounds so silly for members who want to speak to be sitting there and the speaker's asking repeatedly. Right? Doesn't another member wish to speak? Doesn't it? And you're kind of like begging them to speak. No, I'm not begging nobody to speak. I can put a question.
Yeah.
Right?
The silly games that parliamentarians like to play.
What I encourage parliamentarians to do is whatever the subject is, whether it's a bill, whether it's a motion, or whatever it is, prepare yourself before you come to Parliament. Have your speaking notes, etc., all ready. Have what you want to say, and what you have to say should be your views, your position on the substance before you. You shouldn't have to wait to hear what somebody else is going to say, right? And then respond to that, so to speak.
You're only now formulating your thoughts.
Exactly. Because then what's happening then is you're not listening to what the guy's saying, because you're formulating your own. So I will be encouraging them to prepare what they want to say before Parliament starts. And don't hesitate, get up and make a speech. Be committed to your own preparation.
Yeah. Not the other person's speech could probably inform you, make a few tweaks, but you should be prepared. Yeah. And I do want to touch a little bit on what the caller called in. Like I said, he and I was our minds must have been connected. But I think a lot of people don't even understand the honorable, the prestigious position of the speaker. I mean, that's a very high-ranking position. Share with us a little bit about that, as well as some of the seminars and that you will have to undertake and why you do it, what you get from that.
Well, that the speaker, I believe, is third in line for succession, right? Governor, Chief Justice, Speaker.
Right.
So but that's the position. And I think that one of the things that I have to strive to do is to honor that position.
I want you as close to that as possible. We don't want to miss anything.
Doing well.
Honor the position.
Right.
But like I told people, I'm at this stage in my life, I'm not here to make it a name for Ezra. I am there to honor the position of Speaker and to raise the level of parliamentary debate, etc. I look at it this way. If Parliament is not functioning properly, if the debate is not at a certain level, if members are unruly, that's a reflection on me. Because it is my job to make sure that the Parliament operates properly. So I will be offering every opportunity. when in terms of, I would encourage the new members when the CPA conferences come up, whether it's regional, because we have a regional CPA conference in the Caribbean and stuff, and then we have the worldwide conference, which we have I think it's a lot of countries from the whole Commonwealth area. Go to those things, but participate. You know, the first one I went to was in 1986 in London, right? And they send you out the topics, and they ask you to rank what you want to speak. So, being a enthusiastic new member, I ranked everyone, right? I was sitting in Guernsey in the plenary session, and they called my name.
Right.
I turned to Miss Jackson, and I said, must be two of us up, yeah, because I don't, that's not my first choice. Because I assumed that they would always look at my first choice for topics that they want. But what had happened, nobody had said, pick that topic, right? But anyway, I got up on my foot, and it was about public accounting and stuff like that, and wound up getting quoted on BBC, right? But the idea is that you go to these seminars, but participate, not just in the dinners and the cocktail hours,
right?
But participate in the seminars, because that's where you get the opportunity to learn how parliaments work and to learn how you are best able to represent your people, and also you can develop good networks with people, you know, so you can always have people that you can refer to and call up if you need to know something.
And you mentioned during the break as well, again, that when you go as speaker on some of these seminars, you're really grappling with some of the issues and challenges that each jurisdiction and stuff might be facing.
Yeah, well, right now in London, there's a speakers conference going on, which we were unable to attend because of elections. And some of the topics that they are talking about, I was watching Sky News this morning, and I see that they were recognized in the House of Commons by the Speaker of the House of Commons, and from all the various overseas territories, British overseas territories. And some of the topics that they're grappling with is what should the relationship the governor be to Parliament, what's the role of government in Parliament, you know, and how the Parliament, the administration of Parliament, now that we are a independent body from government, how it is funded, etc., you see. So they deal with real issues, you know.
The last one, I mean, going specifically now to what the caller and I were joined on our minds was, again, the public. You know, I gave the example, I didn't like cricket until somebody told me the rules, right? And I think a lot of people are, as he used the right word, ignorant. Again, ignorant insofar as the lack of knowledge of how the system works. And that in itself makes it that you're not that interested in tuning in. You know, all the first reading, second reading, third reading, all of these things. And is that something that you intend to engage in an educational process for us, the general public, as well?
Absolutely. I think, again, one of my role is to educate the public in such a way that when we announce that Parliament is meeting, the people are interested and they actually come down there because they understand the stuff that's going on. So I will intend to develop a program to educate the public. And one of the other things that which I started on the swearing in, you notice that I honored the head boy and head girl from my alma mater, right? So one of the things that I intend to do is to, on the openings of Parliament and others, is to have recognition of Caymanians.
Right,
leaning back to quincentennial when we spent all that time recognizing.
Well, you did a lot of work on that,
right?
Yeah.
We need. Listen, we have every right. We have a responsibility to honor our Caymanians and demand respect for our Caymanians that are doing well and are doing things beyond the call.
Amen to that.
Hear, hear.
So I expect, you know, I would obviously invite the Premier to name a couple of people, the Leader of Opposition to name a couple of people. Yeah. You know, if the minister's doing something, for instance, I don't know, if the graduation ceremony is coming up towards the end of the year, the Minister of Education might want to bring the 5 top students from Clifton Hunter or the 5 top students from John Gray, and we just recognize them. And then what I intend to do is to also lean on the press.
Right.
To actually, don't just watch the thing from home on TV.
Right.
Come down there where you can see, you can feel the emotions, you can feel the atmosphere, you know?
Sit in the gallery.
And sit in the press section of the gallery. You know?
Yeah.
Indeed.
So just one more thing. I have time? Or you, okay. in relation to the training, I got to put you in the spot now. I know my colleague won't do it too, but I'll be the bad one. Now, on this training of the public, can we get a commitment from you as a politician? I know you're a politician, so you don't mind the pressure to come on Straight Talk. Make that part of the one of the venues that you utilize to be able to get some of this message out to the public.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not gonna give you no commitment for no
specific
number of appearances or stuff like that. But I am not adverse to calling your Austin up and say, listen, we're doing this thing down in Parliament, right, and I think we need a little exposure to it. Like I say, my role now is not to dip in to government policy or stuff like that. But when it comes to the management and the administration of Parliament and the public involvement in that, I think I have a serious responsibility. I would love to see, I intend to send out, when they open the Parliament, I'm going to send out invitations to certain people to come to Parliament.
Right.
To see what's going there,
Well, certainly, let me just add to that by extending to you, as we have over the many years of our association, an open door policy. Whenever you have something important to share with the public or to parliamentarians, certainly you can reach out at any time, and we will make space for you, Mr. Miller.
You know that the reason you have all these talk shows today is because you and I started it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Indeed. And we will not forget Super Tuesday as certainly the day of the week in which persons would tune in and to be educated. Speaking of education, you talked about the rules of parliamentary procedure and enforcing them, and of course, training new members in particular. Two questions specifically. In Cayman, we have the standing orders and, of course, the privileges legislation, which outline our rules. You pointed to the fact that those standing orders under the previous speaker, the Honorable Sir Alan McLaughlin, had been modernized and updated. How many new updates were introduced to the standing orders? Because we have not yet seen the new version of the standing orders.
Quite a few. Don't hold me to a number because I really haven't counted them. But quite a few very good changes have been made, and I'll try and highlight some of them. For instance, whenever there's going to be a meeting of Parliament going forward, Parliament will meet on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And the hours of Parliament meeting will be from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. each of those nights. Now, you see that's a good move because that frees up the government to have their cabinet, because you both were here.
Yes, sir.
We'd start off and we'd have a half a meeting on Monday because they had something to do. They had caucus or something. Right. We couldn't meet Tuesday because they had cabinet. This place, it's one of the things I think we need to do is we need to be consistent.
Yes, sir.
So that when the people can expect these things. Another change, quite a few changes. That's if I can remember now. At my age, I got to be careful.
That's all right.
Right?
Get your pen and paper. But speaking of that, as you process that, if you don't mind, I know that weren't we chatting about the Privileges Committee or something that you and I weren't familiar with?
Yes, there was an establishment of, I think, two new committees, one of which is a committee on privileges, and the other is the committee to provide oversight of the ombudsman, two of which are new in this term, aren't they?
They're not new. You haven't heard a lot from them.
Right.
But the Privileges Committee has been around a long, long time.
Okay.
But it didn't meet because normally it meets when you get a complaint about somebody breaking the privileges of Parliament or something like that. So that's and that is of the whole House.
Yes.
And the Ombudsman, that's been in place for a long, long time. And that
will you share the committee on privileges, which as you mentioned, consists of all members of Parliament?
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Well, I won't call on you to outline all of the changes. Certainly, that will be an exercise that we will take on for ourselves. But presumably, those new standing orders have in fact been published, and any member of the public can go in.
They have all been gazetted, and that's the new standing orders is the one that I'm operating under.
All right. We do have a caller on the line. I want to take that before going off to the break. Good evening, caller. Didn't decide to stick around.
Okay.
Yes.
One quick thing about one of the other interesting things in the new standing orders, we now have premier question time.
Yes.
Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
Which is for half an hour. They can submit a question to the clerk 1 day in advance, right? And then there's a half hour designated on Wednesdays for premier question time.
Fantastic.
Then there's another thing that's been introduced called urgent questions, which can be to any minister any day, and they have to be submitted 2 hours before the start of the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to be approved by me that it is an urgent matter and it is in the public interest, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those are good changes. You still have the stuff that was there when all of us was there. You have the regular questions that you submit, and you had the 10 days.
It takes a little bit of time, yeah.
Yeah, and even the Premier's questions and urgent questions are still governed by the rules. I think it's Section 35, which tells you what you can ask questions are and how the questions can be asked. That's all that.
So is the Premier question time a bit of a mirror of what happens in the UK, kind of that quick rapid fire?
Yeah.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Yes, indeed. Well, we were talking earlier on about whether the press conferences of government would continue, and whilst that obviously is still an option to the government, largely I think the questions to the Premier and questions to ministers of urgent matters could very well serve to replace those otherwise press briefings and press conferences that have been held in the past. It is 28 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock, and we do need to pause, take a short commercial break. I see that there's been at least one caller trying to get through. I would encourage that caller to perhaps try again in approximately 4 minutes. The phone lines remain open at 745-2626, or, of course, you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp number, 928-2562, and from there you can either leave us a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. When we come back, of course, Mr. Miller has already alluded to the next meeting of Parliament, but we're going to ask that question again so we can make a note of it and what that meeting will consist of. We talked about, what his goals and ambitions will be as it relates to training and guiding new parliamentarians. We're going to talk about some of the rules that govern Parliament in addition to taking your calls, questions, and comments. So keep it locked. Straight Talk will continue on this Super Wednesday with the Speaker of the House, the Honourable Ezard Miller.
More Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 103.1.
The Cayman Turtle Center's Turtle Crawl 5K is back, Sunday, June 8th, starting from the Cayman Turtle Center at 6:30 a.m. Registration is $25 CI and includes a race shirt and a goodie bag. All funds raised will support conservation of green sea turtles in the Cayman Islands. Corporate discounts are available by emailing info@turtle.ky. Register now for the Turtle Crawl 5K at turtlecrawl.ky. Proudly sponsored by Advanced Fire, Corporate Electric, CG Brit K, and Yanni's Photography.
Have your engine driving like never before with Pure 93, the highest pure octane fuel in Cayman, and available exclusively at Rubis service stations. Pure 93 protects against engine knock, restores lost power and acceleration, cleans fuel injectors, intake valves, removes engine deposits, improves your fuel economy, and it meets international specification requirements for your car. Fill up with Pure 93 now and keep your engine running like new. Fuel the difference with Pure 93, available exclusively at Rubis.
When you're on the go, the experienced team at Foster's Pharmacy are here to help. Drop off your prescription while you shop or WhatsApp us and we'll prepare it, ready for your arrival.
Whether you need prescription or over-the-counter medications, blood glucose testing, or advice on vitamins and supplements, we're here early in the morning to late at night. Both of our locations at our Camana Bay and airport stores are open 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday to Saturday.
For more info, visit fosters.ky/pharmacy. Foster's Pharmacy. Better health because we care.
Shirts, pants, or linens. When you want them clean, just drop them off at Island Cleaners. Island Cleaners is a full-service dry cleaner, meaning you name it, they clean it. Professional shirt service, fluff and fold laundry, and more. Even drape and area rug cleaning and alterations, from quick hem jobs to resizing dresses. Island Cleaners, your one stop for everything clean. Artco Drive off Shedden Road. Ask about VIP and prepaid discounts.
When it comes to cooking for my family, I turn to Kirk Market for all our nutritional needs. Whether whipping up a quick stir fry with lean CAB choice beef or preparing a healthy weekend dinner with fresh local snapper, Kirk Market always has exactly what I need. At Kirk Market, I find premium proteins that keep my family healthy, energetic, and always coming back for seconds. Visit Kirk Market today. Bring home the quality and freshness your family deserves. Kirk Market. Eat well, live well, and experience a world of choice.
We all work hard to one day buy the house of our dreams. Why wouldn't you protect it? With Saxon, you now have the option to get a home insurance quote online. Avoid the waiting in lines and the traffic. Simply log on to saxon.ky and click to get a quote to get started. At Saxon, we pride ourselves on providing our customers with excellent customer service and convenience. So what are you waiting for? Visit saxon.ky today from the comfort of your home or office to get your quote and protect the things you love. Saxon. Smart Insurance.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority, committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM as we continue our conversation at 33 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock with the new Speaker of the House of Parliament, the Honorable Ezra Miller. The phone lines are open at 745-2626, and we do have a caller on the line. Let's go straight to that call. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Good evening. I want to say congratulations to Mr. Ezra. They couldn't pick a better person for the Speaker. I don't know if you know who it is, but I know him, and I know he's a good man. And by the help of God, and with his good knowledge, he got to keep things going. And I got to give him a big thumbs up. A bell ring.
I saw that big toe there.
Good man. Keep the good work up, Mr. Ezra.
I'll do my best.
I know you good. I know you're not too easy to put down. I know you're powerhouse. So you keep on going. By the help of God and for the island and for the people, because like I tell them, if anything go wrong with this, because we're the envy of the Caribbean, and they got binoculars, spyglass, everything on top of us, and these people run in their mouth, but I tell them, my son, don't put on a boat mouth on this government. I think this is a good thing we got going, and by the help of God, we got to make it for Cayman Island and the people.
Yeah, we have to support the government that the people elected. Yep.
Yes, sir. I support it wholehearted, 100%, but there's a lot of speculation going on. People with their goat mouths, and some people got goat mouth, but I say, just pray and just hope that everything work good. And I think on a good group going, so I hope everybody learn to work together, because it can't be lone chiefs, it got to be Indians. So just let's hope and see what happens. And congratulations to you again. I don't know if you know who it is. Last time I talked.
I know who it is.
Last time I talked to you, when we were given the COVID injection down your area, Calabi, I get all the mines. But anyway.
I know exactly who it is, but thanks for the support. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. 100%. Not from my heart. Not just from my lips.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Certainly do appreciate you taking the time to call.
Long time I hear that goat mouth thing there.
Yes, indeed.
Put that goat mouth on him.
Indeed. Well, prior to the break, you were alluding to what could be the next meeting of Parliament, but there is a point of clarification. This is not what we have been anticipating being the first meeting particular to the government's responsibility to outline their strategic policy statement, which is another lengthy phrase of saying what their plan will be for the next 4 years. But that isn't the meeting that is happening next week.
The meeting is happening on Thursday next week. Is simply a training seminar for the newly elected people understanding orders.
All right.
The Premier and his government will set the time for the meetings of Parliament. What I hope to achieve is that, and we don't have much time left in this year. Time goes fast, and we're not one of the new standing orders. Say we don't meet in July and August. So we're only talking about September, October, November, and December. They'll have to do the budget. But the dates for the meetings will be set by the Premier and his cabinet. But what I hope to do starting next year in January is to, prior to January, have an agreement with the Premier on the months that we are likely to meet for the year, so that we can plan out, we can educate the public, we can promote the fact that Parliament is meeting tomorrow, and you need to talk to your MP, to find out what is coming before Parliament and make your input to your MP.
Outstanding. I think that certainly advance notice and schedule of Parliament not only will serve the public better, but also certainly the members, as we see oftentimes members have lives too, though they're going to have to cut those lives short being an MP, but they have lives as well, families in which they want to spend time with. And by having an annual schedule, when you know Parliament is going to be held, will allow them also the time to prepare and present, obviously, better debates, as it were. We have another comment from WhatsApp. It says, good evening, Ellio and Austin, and good evening to your honorable speaker, to our honorable speaker. Thank you for coming to speak today. I'm wondering if you believe public consultations should play a larger role in the lawmaking process and how you might support this. I ask because I just don't see the level of engagement from the public that should be present on key issues that we face in this country. Mr. Miller?
Well, as Speaker, I don't have any authority to dictate to people how they interact with the people that represent them. But again, that is a thing that the people, the voters should do. The voters need to demand from their representative that they meet with them more often, whether it's on a whatever basis, so that they are informed. I mean, you know me, I've always been, my mantra has always been participative democracy from day one. So I started in 1984. For every sitting of Parliament up until 2021, when I lost election, I had a meeting in my constituency before Parliament and a meeting afterwards, right?
I believe that question may have been pointing on the direction, this is my interpretation, on more of the public consultation in relation to a bill.
That's what I'm saying. So
is there something that you think, as Speaker, you can do to promote a more public more involvement for the public on legislation?
No, I think that falls outside of the remit of the Speaker. The way I can do that is to encourage people to participate by coming there and seeing what's being done. And when you hear that Parliament is meeting, look at the agenda and see what matters are on the agenda that you need to have input for, and then you go back to your MP.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, I don't know, I can't claim to say that I know why, but the public is not even necessarily aware that there's something out there circulating. I mean, for example, we were chatting, there was a sexual harassment one. I'm like, really? I didn't know this.
No.
You know, and I'm just wondering, again, this is maybe one of those cases that, I don't know, a word coming from the neutral body of the Speaker just saying, let the public know these three things are out for public consultation. I don't know.
I think I'll have some discussion with the clerk about how we can publicize what matters are coming before Parliament.
I think so.
Without taking any position on any of it, because
absolutely.
I'm not allowed. But the whole idea that one of the things that I would like to foster is greater participation by the public in the whole parliamentary process.
Absolutely.
And part of that means that they're going to have to lean on their MP to make things, and because we can provide the opportunities inside the Parliament for them,
Sure. Quick phone call. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
You decided to stick around. 745-2626 is the number. Again, I just want to, advise the callers when they call in. A good time to start dialing is perhaps when you get a feeling that the speakers are about to wind down their remark. Certainly don't call up when they've just begun their remark, because it's a bit rude to interrupt our guest just to take a phone call. But we want to allow an opportunity for all of our callers and participants to be a part of the discussion. Let's go to the phone lines. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for your call.
Thank you. I'd like to also congratulate Honorable Edward Miller for being Speaker.
Thank you.
Over the years, I've had many conversations with him and learned a lot from him. And I'm sure that the public will have the opportunity to do so this time around that he's in this position. One question I have is do you have any plans to encourage the government to establish a library for the house?
But the problem we have, we've all advocated that for a long time. The problem we have now is a facility, the space to put it. A lot of the stuff now is online, so it's a virtual library of what's going on down as opposed to a physical library.
Okay, so like say the opposition members would be able to have access to reasonable a quantity of research on topics that the House discuss.
Yeah. There's all the archives of previous speeches and all that. That what we call a Hansards and stuff like that they can avail themselves to. And,
no, I mean like research on like facts on a particular subject. For example, let's say they want to talk about, I don't know, decriminalization of small amounts of cannabis. How would the members of the House avail themselves of factual information surrounding that topic? Not just what's in the Hansards, because politicians get sometimes and say a lot of nonsense.
Yeah, but we don't have. I don't think that we have the staff or the facilities to do that kind of detailed research at the moment. I know that there have been attempts in the past, but and I'm not in a position to make any kind of commitment at this time.
Right. No, I understand.
I would give you the assurance that I believe anything that we can do to enhance the knowledge base and the access to knowledge of sitting parliamentarians, we should do.
Yeah.
That's about as far as I can go at this time.
I understand your position. I would like to see, like what you were saying earlier, where the debate in the House is actually elevated.
Yeah.
I think that's important. The public deserves to have that kind of content from the House.
Yeah,
Thank you again.
I think that if we can raise the standard of the debate, people are likely to stay engaged more often.
I agree.
I find that if I'm listening to a debate in the LA and it is non-factual basis and it's basically just commenting on what somebody else said, which I've already heard and I've already formed my position on that, I kind of get disinterested.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I would hope is that we can raise the debate so that when a member gets up to speak, he has that ability to hold the interests of the listening public.
Right. Thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, for those comments, indeed. Well, it is 45 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock, giving us about 15 minutes remaining with our guest in studios. We do have another caller on the line. Let's take that call. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Hello, good evening, Mr. Austin.
Good day, how are you?
Good evening, Mr. Miller.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Rambo.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Ellio.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Miller, congratulations. And I know, sir, you would drive a hard that punchline, right? And obviously, we need to be the facts. It can be very persuasive, and the outcome is two arguments or correct answer. Okay?
Okay.
And as I last I talked to you last year.
Yeah,
you mentioned me, yeah, and I called you. Out the yard northward, I was telling the situation.
Yeah.
It's minor to full provocation, aggravation, you see clearer, self-defense, respect, and I finally see Mr. Azad. You've been there, done that, in both else, as a juxtaposition, you've been there side by side, okay? And finally, Mr. Osi, Mr. Azad.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, cool, man.
All right, thank you very much.
As we have said, all demographics.
Yeah.
A lot of them support you, Mr. Miller. There you go.
Indeed. 745-2626 is the number, or you can reach out to us at 928-2562. That, of course, being our WhatsApp number. Of course, we talked about prior to the break the changes to standing orders, and we won't ask you to certainly reveal or outline what those changes are, but we certainly will take that on as our responsibility in the weeks or so ahead, much as like we have been doing with the analysis of the 5 or so manifestos that make up the grouping of the current National Coalition for Caymanians, sort of giving the public an idea of what we think the strategic policy statement may involve, and until we hear from the government specifically on that point. I see another comment coming from WhatsApp, so I'll just park my comments and offer this one up. As far as parliamentary debates are concerned, a good speech should be like a woman's skirt, long enough to cover the subject and short enough to create interest. Quoting, of course, Sir Winston Churchill.
Just keep the level of the game outside the skirt.
Indeed. Well, I'm glad the writer chose to use to make that point, because my follow-up question relates to the parliamentary rules of procedure coming from Erskine May. And this is, again, I suspect, one of the things that will be discussed in your educational training session next week, Thursday, with the MPs. But Erskine May states a principle that members, MPs, are not permitted to read from pre-prepared speeches. That is something that has been traditionally allowed for ministers only, obviously for the length and breadth of their ministerial subjects, but parliamentarians, backbenchers, even opposition members are discouraged from reading from prepared speeches. I've heard one commentator said in the public domain that most MPs sound as if they are delivering the flight preparation guide as flight attendants do when you take a flight or otherwise, but certainly doesn't seem to come across natural. Now, Erskine May states this as a standing rule to maintain, I think, what they called the cut and thrust of parliamentary debate. But it has also been one of the rules that has been somewhat lax or perhaps not largely enforced by previous speakers. Again, yourself being a stickler for tradition, what is your position as it relates to the manner in which debates are presented from the floor of Parliament?
Well, again, it should be, you shouldn't read it word for word.
Yes.
So, whenever you interrupt anybody on a point of order that they're reading the speech, the standard reply is, I'm referring to my copious notes.
Right.
I think the new standing orders actually gives the speaker the authority, if a member requests to read a speech, so that he can give them that opportunity to read their speech.
Okay.
But as people mature in Parliament, that is likely to happen less and less.
Right.
Newcomers coming in, they want to make sure that they're sticking to their prepared notes and stuff like that. So we have always given quite a bit of leniency,
a little bit of flexibility there.
So I would still encourage them to be prepared enough that they could give it ad lib if they wanted to, right? But I certainly probably would not call the new people to order simply because they were referring to their copious notes in delivering a speech.
I just
remember now that Erskine Mays is only referred to if our local standing orders doesn't have a rule for it.
Yes, doesn't have a provision for that specific area. Just very quickly on this, because I know my colleague wants to read a point. As it also relates to tradition, and again, your position for being a stickler to rules, we noted that you were very quick to ditch the ceremonial wig on day 2 following the swearing-in ceremonies. And I believe it was the former Speaker, Sir Alden, who departed from normal tradition in wearing it and all of the other regalia as part of regular meetings. What will be your position? Just curious minds want to know.
My position is I'm prepared to wear the wig twice a year.
Okay.
Opening of Parliament, opening of the Grand Court.
All right.
I think you'll look good in a wig.
Right.
I think you'll look good in a wig.
You have an opportunity to see me in a wig, and a lot of people seem to say I look good in it. But I found it very uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because, and I told the clerk, there's no need to go and get a custom-made wig for me, right? Because they have all these wigs for all these other speakers.
Yes.
I simply told her, you have one here for Miss Aitna, I'll use that one. So I actually wore Miss Aitna's wig.
Well, all I'm going to say there is, my opinion is only just one, but I think you'd look good in the wig, and I think you deserve to wear the wig. I think you should be wearing it.
The ceremonial robe, which goes with the wig, is a very elaborate and a very expensive thing.
Yes.
But you notice on Wednesday, I wore the ordinary robe, just the black robe over my suit, Now, what I might do eventually is get somebody here who knows how to knit caps and with silver touch. And make me a nice Cayman fedora.
Love it. Love it.
That has a special flair to it. Yes,
We're every day.
That might work. That might work. But you know, Mr. Miller, I
yet to be decided.
If you listen to the feedback, and I'm sure you've gotten some of it, and persons who are not you probably get to hear even more. I think you have a tremendous amount of public support for your position as a speaker, and I think I'm sure you're going to utilize it well. But I'll just say that I think it needs to be utilized well, because I'll never forget. I don't want to call a name of the speaker because that's not the intention, but you remember one time when one of the particular speakers, quite rightly, referred to persons in the gallery as strangers, and how there was a public outcry about that. They were very offended, not knowing that this was actually.
But instantly, that word has been removed from the new standing orders, and they're now called visitors, which is much more appropriate.
Right. But you can see that, again, there was that lack of knowledge. And I think that you have such a public support that for it to not be utilized, right. it would be unfortunate.
The thing that pleasantly surprised me is the public support, pouring of public support for me in this position.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I say for it to not be fully utilized would just be most unfortunate, because there's such a chance with that public support that you have their ear to be able to really inform, educate, enlighten, and elevate them in terms of the processes, etc. And I'm just again, I know we're just about that time to wrap up, so I just again want to mention I am so proud, and I think a lot of persons in the public, it's very seldom that we get to see like the perfect person for that position.
So the bar too high now.
No. And all it requires is for you to be doing exactly what you've been doing. So again, congratulations. I believe I said on behalf of many people out here, congratulations, sir. You're well deserved.
Just one final question before inviting closing comments, with about 5 minutes remaining before we have to pause and take a break. We talked about, what some of your personal goals and ambitions are, what you will seek to leave the Ezard Miller mark, if you will, on Parliament. Obviously, we can expect things like the punctuality of the House, the rules of parliamentary proceedings, certainly a proper schedule that has already been laid out in the newly modernized standing orders, which, of course, we will endeavor to educate the public on at a future date. But in terms of that modernization, some discussions have been held about opening up Parliament, not just during meetings, but outside of meetings, whether it be for members of the public or even visitors, for example, much like Westminster Hall is in the United Kingdom, for viewings and sharing of our history and whatnot. Are these perhaps included in any of your own personal plans for Parliament in Cayman?
One of my objectives is to make Parliament more accessible and for the people to be more comfortable in coming to Parliament. But there's a wonderful 50-year display in the lobby down there now that you might want to go and see.
Okay.
It lays out a lot of the stuff, all the history of Parliament. And that's the kind of thing that I think we need to do more of, right? And invite the tourists to if they want to come in. And
I was just going to ask about that. So tourists are allowed?
Yeah. They don't mean they can't go into the interior, for security purposes.
Right.
But certainly in the lobby area, and that's where the display is on. It's a nice, beautiful thing on the wall. And but I want to increase the desire, make Parliament something that Caymanians feel more welcoming of.
Right.
You kind of walk past the building now and you wonder, what goes on in there?
Right.
So we need to somehow get the public more interested in coming to meetings when Parliament is actually in session, but also outside of that, to look around.
And I think reaching out to some of those young, impressionable minds, never forget taking my kids. You take them to the fire station. Oh, I want to be a fireman. Take them to the police. They want to be policemen. Let's get them in the Parliament young when they're really young and have the same impression on them.
Absolutely. Well, certainly we look forward to, we join the hundreds, if not thousands of voices across the Cayman Islands and certainly witnessing the parliamentary proceedings of the next 4 years. We continue to echo the sentiments many have already expressed before, and that is extreme confidence in your ability to maintain parliamentary decorum, rules, and procedures. And we anticipate it will be a very exciting and hopefully, a promising year for Caymanians in terms of the parliamentary debates and the sort of legislation that will be introduced at that time. I particularly like the fact that one of your agenda items will be to promote Caymanians, particularly outside of politics, but certainly accomplishments made by Caymanians at the beginning of every parliamentary session or meeting. I think that is a step in the right direction. Certainly, I want to, as we stated in your absence when we talked about the opening ceremonies, to congratulate you as a father, because when you congratulated the head boy and head girl of Northside Primary, I noted in particular that the head girl was, in fact, your daughter, so that must have been an extra privilege for you. But, Mr. Miller, I want to thank you for being our guest, and I want to give you an opportunity for any final and/or closing remarks at this time.
Well, first of all, let me thank you and Ellio for inviting me, because I think this is the kind of thing that I would like to do more often. I'm not committing to, and I'm not going to give you no exclusivity, as we did with,
come on,
as we did with Super Tuesdays.
We're family.
But I certainly want to use opportunities like this to promote our democracy, to promote the functioning of Parliament, to encourage people to come to Parliament, to encourage people to listen to the debates, get involved in our democracy, because that is necessary to maintain it. So thank you very much for having me, and I've enjoyed it. And
Yes, indeed.
Come again.
Yeah.
Well, certainly, as I said before, we will maintain an open door policy as it relates to your attendance on the program. If you should ever have something of importance that you want to share with the greater public, just reach out and we will make space for you. I still would like that exclusivity, but I won't hold you to that, because I certainly appreciate, others would want to gain your time as well.
And, one of the things that, as you know, that I will studiously avoid is any suggestion that there could be anything going on behind the scenes.
Indeed.
And now, because
you are indeed an honorable man. Mr. Ezra Miller, the new Speaker of the House of Parliament, it has been our pleasure to host you here on Straight Talk, and we look forward to the next occasion and opportunity we will have to have you in studios. At 58 minutes now past the hour of 5 o'clock, we do have to pause, but we shall return with more Straight Talk here on Bobo FM.
Bobo.
The BBC is the world's most trusted news source.
And Bobo 103.1 is where you'll find the BBC World Service.
BBC News, the world news from the BBC.
And the home of Cayman's most listened to talk shows.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth.
And welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon.
Across Cayman,
on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation.
OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC.
Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive wind.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat. Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
BBC News, hello, I'm Eileen McHugh. President Vladimir Putin's name is not on a Kremlin list of Russians due to attend Thursday's talks in Turkey about the war in Ukraine. Ukraine's leader, Volodymyr Zelensky, has indicated he will be in Turkey but will only meet the Russians if Mr. Putin leads them. Our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg has seen the Kremlin list.
There is a presidential aide, Vladimir Medinsky, who led the Russian delegation at peace talks 3 years ago, a deputy foreign minister, a deputy defense minister, and a senior official from the chief of the general staff. This does look like quite a low-level delegation, especially when you consider that Ukraine's president is travelling to Turkey. I suppose you could say that if these talks do take place, even on a low level, that's still quite a moment, because this would be the first direct Moscow-Kiev talks for more than 3 years.
Syria's leader, Ahmed al-Shara, has praised President Trump's decision to lift sanctions on Syria, calling it a historic and courageous step. Speaking on television, President al-Shara said it alleviated the suffering of the Syrian people and contributed to their rebirth. Here's Lina Sinjab.
I think this is an address of recognition for the people who've supported Syria and supported him in the past 6 months, but mainly stressed that the Syria now is out of isolation, and basically said now that this is a new chapter for Syria, and the work will start, the economy will move on, and this is a moment for the whole country to stand together and appreciate what they have achieved so far.
A large group of former Israeli hostages have written an open letter to the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, urging him not to abandon efforts to reach a new ceasefire agreement in Gaza. This comes even as Israel intensifies its operations, warning thousands of Gaza residents to leave their homes. Wira Davis is in Jerusalem.
The letter, which has been signed by 67 former hostages who were released from captivity in Gaza under previous ceasefire deals, urges the Israeli Prime Minister not to walk away until a comprehensive deal is signed. It says that most Israelis want the hostages home, even at the cost of halting military operations. Referring to a new American-sponsored ceasefire proposal that could see several remaining hostages released and an unspecified period of calm, the former hostages urged Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump not to let this historic momentum stop.
The UN has warned that around 1,000 critically ill patients in Sudan's Darfur region have almost no drinking water after artillery fire destroyed a water tanker. The UNICEF-supported truck was at one of the few medical facilities still operational in the city of El Fasher. This is the World News from the BBC. Argentina is tightening its immigration rules. A presidential spokesman said incomers will have to pay for healthcare if they don't have insurance, while universities will be allowed to charge foreign students. There are also plans to make residency and citizenship harder to obtain, while the process of deporting migrants who've committed crimes will be sped up. France's Prime Minister has denied knowing about alleged sexual and physical abuse at a Catholic school to which his family had links during his time as Education Minister. François Bayrou told a parliamentary committee that he only learned of the allegations through the media. Our Paris correspondent Hugh Schofield reports.
François Bayrou is a practicing Catholic, and he sends several of his children to the Notre Dame de Bethlehem school near his home and political base in Pau. But it's at this very school that allegations have emerged of systematic violence and sexual abuse of pupils going back several decades. One of the Prime Minister's own daughters has said she was hit by a teacher. Mr. Bayrou insists he knew no more of this than was reported in the press, but some of his political enemies say that's a lie, that he did know more than he's letting on, maybe that he even intervened to try to deflect judicial interest away from the school.
A wildfire burning in central Canada has killed 2 people. Police recovered the bodies of a man and a woman in Lac du Bonnet in Manitoba province. It followed reports that some residents of the rural community had been trapped by the advancing fire. Hundreds of others were evacuated. French police have charged a taxi driver with stealing luggage and cash from the British Foreign Secretary David Lammy and his wife. The driver allegedly sped off with their bags after a row over the fare for a long-distance trip from Italy to a French ski resort. He later left the luggage at a police station where he filed a complaint. Mr. Lammy's wife alleges money was missing. BBC News.
The views and opinions expressed expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM on your radio dial with your host, Ellio Solomon, and myself, Austin Harris. 7 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock is the time in studios, giving us just over 22 minutes before we have to wrap up yet again another show and program for you this evening. But certainly, again, what a powerful and thoroughly enjoyable conversation we just had with the Speaker of the House.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and first of all, you know, he doesn't need anything prompting in terms of talking. Everything just flows. You know, he can answer the questions from any angle, political or otherwise. But, of course, that's 41 years of political involvement in this country, one way, shape, or another, sitting right there in the chair.
Yeah.
And, again, hats off to him. I think he has the support of both of us and a lot of persons out there in the general public. And I'm looking forward to some great things. And, you know, what's going to be really keen for me is just really what we can do. He talked about, you know, even people visiting the parliament. So, you know, getting, whether it be tourists coming here or whether it's going to be our younger, impressionable minds, and even the adults, getting that curiosity, getting that interest developed in the public and getting them into parliament. And I think a big part of that is educating them as to how that game works,
yes,
if you want to call it that, how the system works. And once you start to understand the rules, well, things get a little bit more interesting as well. Then he's talking about, you know, taking away some of the acrimony, the rancor, and kind of making that more of something that we can look forward to, as he's used the advocating style of the courts, you know, where it's a lot more respect in terms of how we refer to each other as my learned friend, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be some interesting times, and I look forward to it from a speaker perspective.
No, absolutely. Again, we anticipate great things from Speaker of the House, Ezra Miller. And again, to the point that he shared with us, the next meeting of Parliament won't be per se a traditional meeting of Parliament, but will be a meeting not in the parliamentary hall, as we normally know it to be, but will be in fact in the conference room, and will be a meeting largely consisting of the Speaker and all of the 19 elected members, sort of a training session, if you will, for those MPs in terms of what the expectations will be from the Speaker's chair, as well as some guidance that he will offer, particularly to the new MPs. That meeting is scheduled to take place next week, Thursday, the 22nd of May, but not to be confused, as I previously confused it at the time. It is not a substantive meeting of the Parliament body, where we anticipate the next meeting, the first official meeting of Parliament, will be to outline the government strategic policy statement, which is a rather ceremonial way of saying what the government's plans will be for the next 4 years. In the absence of that, we will continue to do our own analysis of the existing manifestos and give a guesstimate as to what we think the common areas of mutual agreements are, as it was listed and outlined during the election campaign, and what could largely form part of what we anticipate will be the government's agenda over the next 4 years.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and just to make sure there's no bent or twisted view about the training. I mean, again, that is not to be in any way at all belittling against to the members. I mean, all of the persons who have been elected, as far as I know, are intelligent persons, but there's no job that you get involved with that you don't need an orientation day. And there's a lot of things to learn getting elected in terms of various processes, even more so for the ministers. But in terms of Parliament, there's just a process, and you just have to learn it. And the quicker you can learn that, the smoother everything can actually go. So, again, hats off to him for being able to offer that for the new members.
Yes, no, absolutely. Speaking of election campaigning, Ellio, you will recall that there was a lot of talk or discussion leading up to the general elections. I think going back to the early part of April, where the 2025 pre-election economic and financial update that is traditionally prepared as part of the public management and finance law. It's prepared in accordance specifically to Section 26 of the Public Management and Finance Act 2020 revision, and therefore presumably is a document produced by the government for the financial years ending the 31st December 2025 and 2026. Now, in that pre-re-election economic and financial update, it suggested, or as a matter of fact, it stated unequivocally, that the departing UPM administration was in fact leaving behind a public finance crisis for the next government. I think media reports went on to state that the minority government managed to turn what should have been a surplus of almost $55 million this year into a $26.2 million deficit. And that was certainly all the rage and used arguably by many of the newcomers, challengers to the previous UPM government,
to unseat them
leading up to the election. Well, just 2 days ago, so that would have been Monday, the government published the Cayman Islands government quarterly financial report for the 3-month period ending 31st March 2025, and which was published in the Cayman Islands Gazette on Monday, the 12th of May, as is required by law. And this is what it states. I'm going to give it to you verbatim. It says the unaudited financial results for the first quarter of 2025 show a $262.9 million surplus for core government and a $268.1 million surplus for the entire public sector. Net assets for the government were $2.5 billion, with overall bank account balances of $614.6 million in cash and deposits. The overall surplus of $268.1 million was $54.6 million, or 26% greater than the projected year-to-date operating surplus of $213.5 million. This favorable position was due to actual revenues being higher than budgeted by $65.7 million for the period, with coercive revenues accounting for $60.6 million. The report's conclusion noted the cyclical nature of the Cayman Islands government revenues, emphasizing that first quarter revenue results of $554.1 million are expected to be the highest revenues earned in any single quarter for 2025. This is directly related to financial service fees being due at the beginning of each year. The Cayman Islands government unaudited quarterly financial report for the 3-month period ending 31st March 2025 can be found online at www.gov.ky/publications. Any person can certainly find this and see it for themselves. But it raises the question of, was politics at play when the public was certainly discussing the 2025 pre-election economic and financial update? Arguably, both that financial update as well as what I just read, the quarterly financial report, would have been prepared or should have been prepared by the government's finance department. So the question really, has to be asked, what was the point of that financial update and the suggestion, or arguably spreading the fear, that the country was facing a deficit, when in fact we are just suggesting that perhaps 2025 may represent the strongest revenue of any first quarter to date?
Well, again, in the spirit of transparency, we have just got this information. And
just showed up.
And it is something that's rather comprehensive. We both want to take time out to read it. But if we're to comment on what it seems to be right now, then we seem to have a problem.
Yes.
What is it? Houston, we have a problem.
Houston, we very clearly have a problem.
Because if it is indeed the case that the UPM government would have left a surplus, but yet it was suggested and published that they didn't leave a surplus, but in fact a deficit, shortage of money, as opposed to an excess of money, then I don't know. That is a major, major problem, right? And naturally my mind's going to go, if that is indeed the case, somebody's done something, intentional or otherwise, it doesn't matter, that could have cost the government their seat.
Yes. No, absolutely. This is a very troubling state of affairs.
I sure hope that it's not a situation where somebody has published something that's false information that would have led to the removal of a government. Because now you really can't say what has had the impact or not. But clearly publishing that a government has left us in a deficit position, a shortage of money of $20-something million, didn't have a positive effect on the government.
No, not
of
at
the
all.
day. And now to hear that you have excess money, excess of $200+ million, which is a completely different story. Like I said, we have to investigate it and find out more, but I sure hope. But anyway, we'll see what the deal is. But to the public, understand that if that publication was in fact false, that to me is a major problem. And at the minimum, if we don't want to say somebody has deliberately done something to interfere and remove a sitting government, then clearly you're going to have to say unintentionally or otherwise, slackness. Well, how we would say that in local colloquialism, slackness.
Slackness. That's
at the minimum.
At the minimum.
At the minimum, it's complete slackness that has resulted in false information being propagated to the public, which most likely is a key factor, if not the factor, that would have caused the unseating of the government.
No, absolutely. This information was, in fact, is news coming from the government website, gov.ky, news and press releases, for today's date, the 14th of May, 2025, and it provides details on what is, in fact, the unaudited quarterly financial report for the 3-month period ending 31st of March, 2025, and it very clearly shows that the country is not in a deficit position, as was previously stated back in April, just a month ago, where it was stated that the previous UPM government had left us in a deficit position of some $26 million, where in fact now the details coming from the very same government suggest a surplus of $262 million for core government, a surplus of $268 million for the entire public sector, accounting for what does work out to about 50, let me get it right, let me make sure it's right, $54.6 million surplus, as was the anticipated surplus that was expected in the pre-budget forecast itself. But again, in April, they suggested that instead of $55 million surplus, we were in fact going to end March in a deficit position of $26 million. Right now, this press release issued by the government today paints an entirely different picture. And this is a question of government accountability, without a doubt.
No, absolutely. And, just for the avoidance of doubt, want to make sure and lay it out, as my good friend used to tell me back when I started on radio. Let's be clear. This is any one of you working in a company and somebody coming out and accusing you of losing money to the tune of $20-something million a year or whatever.
Yes.
That's what the argument was. You lose your job, and then now, as soon as you lose your job, a statement comes out that says, no. They didn't lose $26 million. In fact, they gained an extra $54 million.
That's right.
So, I don't know. Like I said, I need to do a little bit more reading, but for sure, we'll have something to talk about tomorrow if that is indeed the case, because that is a problem, major problem.
No, absolutely. And just for the completion of details, I'm going to forward you.
I have it.
You have it? Okay, great. Wonderful. So you have the same information that I have.
I do.
And again, all persons have to do.
I'm almost driving the same car. I remember our friend that just left the studio used to talk about, they put this on my windshield.
Indeed, quite right.
Yeah.
Well, again, there is a question, just as we start off a new government administration. This isn't a question largely for the politicians. It is a question for the civil service, and in particular, I dare say, the Honorable Financial Secretary and or his office, the Accountant General or otherwise,
Auditor General?
again, and the Auditor General, to certainly look into. But it was, in fact, reported widely in the media that the 2025 pre-election economic and financial update suggested the country would have begun in a new government administration $26.2 million in the red, not in the black, or in deficit, whereas the report, which is published on today's date, suggesting there is no deficit, but in fact, as was anticipated, a almost $55 million surplus, but specifically $54.6 million surplus, which is a complete about-face on the whole financial outlook and forecast for the Cayman Islands. And to my colleague's point, arguably that deficit would have been one of the reasons voters went to the polls to remove the previous administration.
Absolutely.
So there is a question even here for the deputy governor as head of the civil service.
I mean, you and I were shocked.
Yeah,
right?
I was completely shocked. I had to read it a few times just to make sure that there wasn't the word deficit included in any of that press release, and it certainly did not include it and did not give the indication, as was the case in April, that the country was facing a financial crisis. This is a serious error.
Oh, yeah.
And again, I would anticipate or expect a degree of accountability on the part of government economic forecasters and otherwise bean counters to tell us, why did we have one report in April and another report now coming out towards the middle of May?
Yeah, error. I mean, I appreciate where you're coming from, but error is an understatement. That is like a major problem.
It is a major problem.
You on that statement alone would have caused the undermining of an election in relation to a particular government and the individuals involved.
Absolutely.
I don't know how you recover from that one.
I don't know either, and I certainly don't know how the deputy governor, the Honorable Franz Manderson, will be able to ignore calls, what we can anticipate will come from the public, as it relates to the news prior to in April, and what is now being published by the government in its quarterly economic analysis.
Either way, we'll be having a look at this PERFU or whatever it was referred to, and as well as what we're seeing now. Make sure we do all the comparative notes so that we can discuss it a little bit more thoroughly tomorrow.
Yeah.
But definitely from a cursory overview, not good.
No,
not good at all.
Not good at all. And again, it is a complete about-face, if not change of financial position in what the public was led to believe versus what it is now today suggesting is, in fact, the country's current financial position.
And 2 weeks later.
Yeah,
2 weeks later, we know the
literally
facts.
2 weeks later, well, almost 2 weeks. I think the first report started coming out in the media around the first week of April. Then, of course, we had the elections on the April 30th, and now we're 2 weeks into the month of May.
2 weeks after the election.
And 2 weeks after the election, and we're looking, again, it's called the government's quarterly financial report for the 3-month period ending 31st March 2025, which was published in the Cayman Islands Gazette on Monday, the 12th of May, and a press release issued today, the 14th of May, stating that the country is, in fact, in a surplus position and not a deficit position, as was previously reported. This is very alarming news and calls for a number of questions, particular to accountability. Who was responsible for those 2025 figures ahead of the election, and largely what the civil service, the Honorable Deputy Governor, intends to do.
What do you do if what we're saying is correct? Yes. What are you now going to do about that?
To your point, I don't see how this is recoverable.
I'm sure under normal circumstances, heads would roll. You know,
one would expect.
But the thing is that again, like if that's the case, it's like this is like a damage that you can't undo. I mean, you're talking about
it's over.
I caused X amount of people to lose their seats.
Yeah,
a change in government, arguably because of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we shall know. We shall know very soon.
It says the report's conclusion noted that the government revenues, emphasizing that first quarter revenue results of $554 million are expected to be the highest revenues earned in any single quarter for 2025.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Those are that is huge news as we seek to end our program today. Undoubtedly, this story I'd be very surprised if it isn't in the headlines either tomorrow or heading into the weekend on Friday. And it does raise a very significant question of accountability and accuracy in terms of government financial reporting that falls squarely on the civil service, but arguably squarely on the financial secretary and the Ministry of Finance.
So, as much as I have to, let me mention this. I couldn't ignore that just prior to the election, in relation to the referendum, you had the Compass that printed 3 articles. They were all just 3 articles the day before the vote. And you have to sit and say, no, we've been discussing this issue for 6 and 7 months.
Yeah.
And you leave all your anti-cruise articles for the day before election.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm sure it was purely coincidence. Pure coincidence. Either way, dropping a bomb like that, I'm sure, has to have an effect. And this is exactly what's ringing in my ears right now on this particular thing here. It is hard. It is going to be hard, if in fact that is correct, to not draw some really dark conclusions that this was not deliberate, right?
Yeah.
Because this is an astronomical mistake at best.
Yes.
If the facts are, if what we're getting right here and gleaning now is in fact the case, this is at minimum a astronomical mistake.
Huge.
That has had major ramifications, and there's no way to rectify that.
None.
And I am challenged to see how anyone is going to deal with the accountability issue for that, if that is in fact the case.
Yeah. We are just left shaking our heads with the revelation of these details. And again, I encourage members of the public, don't take our word for it, www.gov.ky/news/press release details. And you will find the same article that we just read directly from it for your benefit, the listening public. But it certainly does raise some unavoidable questions in terms of the accuracy of government financial statements and the position, the financial position of this country.
How would you be able, if, again, I just, it is so incredulous, right? So incredible that I still can't, I don't even want to say it like it's factual.
No.
Because I got to go over this with a fine-tooth comb.
Yes.
But if that is indeed the case, how do you have any credibility in what the government publishes now?
Who knows?
It's like, what is that?
Who knows? Well, 28 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock is the time. We've run out of time for today, but it certainly gives us something to talk about tomorrow, as will be an examination of the standing orders, which have also been amended. But that's all we have for today. Thank you for joining us. Tune in tomorrow for more Straight Talk on Bobo FM.
The home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news source in the world. This is Bobo